afternoon. Welcome to the presentation on preparing our campus facilities for 2021 and 2022 and beyond. And I know that this title is speaking about campus facilities, but this presentation really does quite a bit more. And as we get into it, you'll see what we're talking about. We've learned a lot over 20 years of helping Catholic schools succeed, and we're going to talk about lessons learned. We've got 9 in particular that we want to talk about, and how that the lessons can lead to your financial sustainability and your long-term life of the school, which is critical. We've lost way too many schools over the recent years. Some 200 per year we seem to lose of our Catholic schools. We have to turn that around. We have to think differently about our approach. We can't continue to do the same things we've been doing, or we won't survive. My name is Steve Habib. I'm president of the firm, and I've been working with Catholic schools my entire career. I have 4 children. I'm very proud of them all. My daughter's still working with me here. And I'm also on a board of trustee member of a Catholic high school. I've been on that board for 4 years, and 6 years prior to that, I was on another Catholic high school board. I see more than architecture and more than planning. My mission is to help as many Catholic schools as possible, not simply survive, but thrive and grow and be here for the next 40, 50 years and beyond. And with me is my associate, Jack.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Jack Shea. I'm a former curriculum director and school principal, and I'm in a second career now as an educational planner. And what I do is I work within the firm looking at curriculum and instruction and the intersection of how that comes together with the building and how space needs are driven by the curriculum and the future goals of the school.
So, holy boldness, what's it mean? How do we do it? I'll tell you, it's one of the key lessons we've learned over the years is those schools that have leadership that proceed with holy boldness advance that institution. I've seen it save schools from going out of business. Good reputation, great educational program, all those items are important, but if leadership doesn't move forward with holy boldness, they typically don't get where they want to go. So if we're going to talk more about that and talk about the change in the mindset about making sure that you will succeed. Another lesson learned is that your facilities are going to be their first impression. Those students and families that come to your school to decide whether or not they're going to attend. And I'll tell you the story. This is a personal story. My oldest son, when he was reaching the age of high school, we went to look at a number of Catholic high schools in the area. And the one that was his first choice, we attended with 2 families, 2 of his very close friends. And when we walked into that facility, we saw a wonderful, wonderful group of teachers. We saw a curriculum that we felt was going to be appropriate. But I'll tell you what we really saw, the first thing was the facilities, and they were not up to snuff. Now, my family and my son decided that that was going to be the school for him. However, the other 2 families decided that the facilities just turned them off so much. That first impression of the facilities, they saw that and they said, we're not going to send our son here. So they lost 2 out of 3. That's a real shame. But that happens. We have to recognize that our facilities become their first impression. This is an example of the renovation of an auditorium. This is a Catholic high school that I currently sit on as a Board of Trustee member. And just a vast difference. And as we move forward through the presentation, you'll see more examples such as this. This, on the left, you'll see the old cafeteria serving line. Following renovations, we have what has become a real student center. That serving line and the student center, where it's more than a cafeteria. But the first impression that this makes is key. It really helps bring students in. Now, this is a school that, a before shot of an entrance to a school. We're going to talk about this later on because this is one of the case studies that we'll speak of. But that image became, if we go to the next slide, became a state-of-the-art 21st century teaching facility. This wonderful Catholic school has a chapel, which is shown on the left. And this is in rural North Dakota. What was able to be created here was done so due to leadership proceeding with holy boldness, raising close to $30 million in order to build this school up.
Now, as Steve said, first impressions certainly are lasting ones. You can take a look at two spaces here we're contrasting. And the other connection of it is also the overall health of the building. When we think of the health of the building, there are some variables that I'm going to show you that come from the Chance School of Public Health at Harvard University. But let's take a look at these, and you can see the overall difference there with its connection to the outdoors and the space on the right. There are flexible spaces there with choice for seating. We can see that it is very secure because we can view from connection to connection. And we'll use this picture again a little bit later. Let's take a look at the 9 elements of, first of all, the designs that contribute to student engagement and faculty engagement as well. So when we look at these broken down into environmental elements, we can see that light, temperature, and air quality all contribute to about half of the overall impression or engagement in the building. But flexible arrangements for seating and movement, and then ownership, that is that connection of being able to feel as though that building, you're part of that organization. You belong in that school, the branding of your school shown. And then, of course, the textures and the colors all contribute to that overall impression and the engagement that people have when they enter your school. Now, the 9 foundations, we're probably focused up there on the top with COVID right now, with ventilation and air quality. But certainly the light quality, the ability to be able to control the temperature, to filter out sounds, and all of the types of things, feeling secure in that building, contribute to the overall health of the building and the health of the occupants. You know that a healthy building contributes to overall health, whether it be the psyche, the mental being, lessening depression, for example, in bright buildings, and anxiety and things of that nature. So let's take a look at some of the kinds of things that happen there when you enter the space. You can see this is a biophilic connection. It's connecting with the outdoors. You know, just feeling as though being inside is still an inviting place to be. We spend about 90% of our time indoors. You know, we really need to make that connection to the outdoors and know that the space that we're in is really still natural, that we have natural light spilling in, and we can feel that we are part of a greater world. When families send their children to our schools, they are sending their most precious commodity. They need to feel safe and secure when they enter the buildings. And we'll talk about the ability your school has to be able to respond. You know, can your building respond in the event? If we look at safety, you think of that more in the insurance area, reducing risk. And then security itself, We're looking at minimizing threats that are imposed upon us. So those types of things all need to be taken into consideration. How will your building perform when you need to use it, when you need to exercise a protocol to make it a secure facility? All of these come together. Here's an example. When we look at the design considerations that go into this, we can see that it's bright and airy. There are opportunities for the occupants when they enter this space to sit in different seating arrangements, to be able to socialize and engage with others that are in the space. We can see that it's connected naturally in that biophilic connection to the outdoors. And we can see that there is that natural daylight that spills in, and we are uplifted when we enter this space. There's a social connection that's there, and we feel secure because we can be bound by others. We have a natural desire to be connected with others, and we feel safer and more secure when we're not isolated. And then, of course, on top of this, the school can lay on security measures with access control, closed circuit television, and of course, notification systems, all contributing to a very safe and secure environment. Now, here's the difference. If we look at perception, a school that we've worked with, we've opened up the school on the right, and we're making connections to be able to see and scope. So rather than being in isolation, those spaces can be connected. Now, that's a perception of public safety, but it is also a connection that ends up happening, connecting the curriculum of teaching and learning, connecting one classroom to another, so that there is spill ability, being able to come out into common spaces and work in collaborative groups or do active learning, connect from one subject area to another if it's a middle school or a high school, or if it's an elementary school, to be able to connect with the teacher next door so that there is actually informal collaboration that's going on with the staff in the building. Now, this is a busy diagram, but what it is to show you how much is going on in the demands we have of 21st century learning skills. When we think of the zones that we need, or the different types of spaces, so that we don't have a teacher leading the class all the time, we have opportunities for students to be able to collaborate and communicate and work together, to be able to qualify their reasoning, to be able to think and solve problems, critical problems, that they will bring then into life experiences, and they'll be able to bring into higher education and into their future jobs. That's the type of literate worker we want to bring into society, and the type of literal citizen we want to have contributing to our society. Now, it has been said that the school building is the third teacher. And what do we mean by that? We all know, particularly in a Catholic school setting, that parents are the first teacher. And then the formal act of coming to school with teachers is that second teacher. But the school building contributes to learning. It supports learning if we have the right structure for that, so that students can come together and work in different size groups, be led by a teacher when it's appropriate, and then be guided. And social emotional learning is then supported within that building as well. I'd like to introduce you to David Thornburg's Language of School Design. David Thornburg is a futurist. His work is very well known within the architectural world and with the educational circles. I'll bet some of you have heard of his work. One of his books is Campfires in Cyberspace, Looking into the Future. But here are 4 elements, design elements, that come into school design. And we could look at the first one being the campfire. Here we have a leader or authority that's leading the group, and is that knowledge that is being imparted on the rest of the little group, whether it be small or large. Whole class instruction would be another example. If the teacher at the front of the class leading an entire group of 25 or 30 students. A watering hole is somewhat different, though. That's a place to be able to come and gather, to exchange ideas, and to be able to collaborate. maybe qualify thoughts, bounce ideas off one another. There's a spontaneity that comes in that, in gathering at a watering hole or a flexible space. A cave is the next area, and you can see that's a space to be able to reflect with oneself, to be able to think through things. In a Catholic school, it might be great to have that in a chapel setting or some little spots for reflection in the building. They don't necessarily have to be very formal spots, but just little places to be able to retreat and reflect. And the fourth area is life. And that's spaces within the building to allow us to connect to real life experiences. Those experiences that prepare us to be able to transfer what we've learned in school into the real world. Let's take a look at an example. In a Catholic school, in the chapel, being led by a priest at the campfire. That's an appropriate design that you would think we are imparting or sharing that. It's characterized by that focus or presentation of the Mass here in this case. And then we have a watering hole, less formal, opportunity to be able to chill, perhaps, get back, share thoughts and ideas, formal and informal, with others. But it's a place where we can really look at our learning and reflect in what we are doing within the school with some different types of ways and thoughts. And then we have the cave, place to be able to retreat, to be able to perhaps reflect, intake some new information, reflect on some prior information, prior knowledge that one has, and to be able to integrate it or synthesize it, to be able to come back and collaborate with others or participate in the class. And then the final area we have is real life. This is an example of Notre Dame Academy, right near our office in Massachusetts, where the girls had an opportunity to make real life connections in their tech programs at the high school. And they loved seeing the building connection and design as part of that overall opportunity to integrate what happened in school with a real life experience. Now, the next area that I'd like to talk to you about is, how did we get here? How did we need to change from our buildings that are designed like this? They came from the one-room schoolhouse. If you think of it, when communities were small, they needed one room and a school. But as communities grew, we replicated the one-room schoolhouse and made more and more. And we could then personalize them and bring them into age unit groups because we had critical mass. And we could put all of the 15-year-olds in one room and the 14-year-olds and the 5-year-olds in different rooms as those schools were created. But if you think of it, these are set up so that the cells work in isolation. Each teacher with each group of students is really isolated from the rest of the eggs in the crate. So how can we change that? And how have schools been doing it? Schools we've been working with, and I bet some of you have been moving away from that egg crate design. And it's starting to think of it in a different language. Perhaps you're calling it a classroom, and that's certainly fine. But in this case, we're calling the classroom a learning studio, because we're trying to think of it as being a little bit different as part of a learning community. And you can see these learning studios are connected to quiet commons, and then there's a teacher collaboration area. We have areas to present information that one has done, exhibiting it before other students, small presentation spot, small watering holes that could be there, small group instruction, specialist support that's coming in, specialized needs that students might have can be delivered in these areas. And we have some opportunities to connect with other things, such as having a sink in the space or other media that one might need to be able to work on projects. So that then becomes spillability. We're able to connect from the classroom and spill out and connect with other students in adjacent classrooms. At the high school level, that could be conceivably with other departments within STEM, for example. Now here we're seeing students working in all types of different sizes of groups, working in collaboration with a teacher in one large group in isolation, and in other types of watering holes throughout. This space has a wall removed, and there's an opportunity to be able to spill out as you continue and as time allows, be able to continue working on projects or different topics that students have been working on throughout their day and throughout their week, if it's long-term projects as well.
Well, this is one of our lessons learned over the years, is that Band-Aid tactics don't equal sustainability. They just don't bring us to the level where a school is going to survive long term. We've been talking about, Jack's been talking about actual design of spaces and how that needs to shift. And we've seen some of that happen with these types of activities. They can be helpful, but in some cases, they can actually hurt the longevity of the school. For instance, increasing tuition. We're going to talk about that in a little further in the presentation. But increasing the tuition, that may help short term, but it can also adversely impact your enrollment. Adding international students is good. It can help. It brings in additional revenue from tuition. All of these can be helpful, but they don't appear to help or to bring us to a sustainability level where we know our schools are going to survive long term. And as we get further into the presentation, we're going to talk about the financial end of our industry, of our mission. And we're seeing that public school spending in the United States has just gone through the roof. These are real numbers. This is what our competition in many states, what our competition is doing. Spending money on facilities. And remember that first lesson learned about first impressions. That becomes your future students' first impression when they walk into your building. Well, this is what we're dealing with. This is what we're up against. And we need to bring our facilities up to snuff. We need to move from here on the left to here on the right. Things have changed. Life has changed. We need to create those spaces that Jack was discussing, and our schools must change. But more importantly than just simply our schools, our mindsets need to change. Our approach and our attitude. Now, here we go with some more talk about, or more lessons learned about sustainability. And lowering tuition can work to increase enrollment. You know, when we think about what is the mission of your Catholic school, I've always been a believer that the mission of Catholic schools is to educate not simply those with the means, those with the wealth, but those that don't have that avenue. You know, our Catholic schools, we provide something special for those students to bring them up, to show them ways where they can succeed, to ready them for higher education, where they can become more capable earners. And that's my thought when I think about the mission of Catholic schools. So how do we do that? By lowering tuition. How do we sustain a school? Well, I believe and have learned that by building an endowment, okay, by building an endowment, we can then lower tuition, which will increase enrollment and allow our schools to be sustainable. And you say, well, how do we build an endowment? Well, that can be done with the use of a good master planning process. a process that takes into account not simply the facilities, but also what's needed for the school as a whole. And as Pope Francis says, do not be discouraged by the difficulties that the educational challenge presents. Remember, we spoke about moving forward with holy boldness. It requires a different mindset. It requires a can-do attitude. It requires a thought process that says, this mission that we're working on is more important and will be able to be achievable. And it can be challenging. But I will say, another lesson we've learned is there is always money. The money is there. If we just take a peek at the percentage of Americans who identify as Catholic today and who identified as Catholic in the heyday of our institution, say 1965, for example, it's still 25% of Americans identify as Catholic. The population has increased significantly from some 47 million to 81 million in terms of that 25%. The population of the country as a whole from 190 million to 325. I think we're up even more than that now. But my point is, it's still 25% of Americans identify as Catholic. So when we use that I hear people say, well, there aren't as many Catholics as there were. There certainly are. Or I hear our alumni, they don't have the kind of funds. They don't have the wealth. Well, I don't believe that. We've done an incredible job educating our Catholic students over the years. A phenomenal job. You know, we've sent them to four-year colleges. And when we do that, their earning potential is significantly greater. So we have fostered success in our alumni. And I want to talk a bit about the potential now. If we look at, and these are averages. So we take an average elementary school and an average high school that opened in 1965. I'm sure if you think about your schools, it wouldn't surprise me if the majority of you there, that your schools opened in 65 or earlier. That wouldn't surprise me at all. And the average graduates per year, we can see for an elementary school was 27, for a high school, 118. I know that that's pretty typical with the schools that I've served on the boards of, and the schools that we've come across. Of course, we've been working with some schools that are much larger, but we've worked with schools that are much smaller. But we take a look at the alumni, the total alumni in the elementary, 1,458. And then we look at the wealth of those alumni. And we've already established, and I believe that you'll recognize that the students that graduate from our Catholic high schools and from our Catholic schools, remember, if they've gone to an elementary school, the chances are they've very well gone to a Catholic high school as well. They certainly are above average in their wealth, income, capability. If we just use this diagram and we look at that, the top 10% earners of your alumni, if they simply donated 1% of their wealth, and we're just talking about, in this case, the average, 169 of the wealthiest alumni from your elementary school. if they just gave 1%, this school would be able to raise close to $6 million. There's a lot of wealth in our alumni because we've created that wealth via our educational system. We've educated them well. They've gone on. They've succeeded. And many are at the age, if your school started in 1965 or 1970 or earlier or later, our alums are getting to the age where they're thinking about what they're going to do with the wealth that they've earned over their years. The challenge is to reach them, and we're going to talk about that too. But if we take a look at the average high school, all right, and we say that same formula. Let's take the top 10% of the earners from that alumni group. In this case, it's 749. All right. If those 749 alumni were to donate simply 1% of their wealth to your school, there's $26 million. And if you look at the potential, is obviously significantly greater. If you simply look at what if that percentage is higher? What if that donation is higher? What if that group of alums is inspired and engaged in your school and wants to support it? It could easily support not simply facility improvements, but an endowment that works to lower tuition, increase enrollment, keep the school sustainable for the next 50 plus years. We can't keep on doing what we've been doing. We don't have a choice at this point. We have to succeed. So if we look at the master planning process, and we're saying here that it's going to pave the way for progress and sustainability. It's a process. It's not simply a master plan. It's not simply a document. It's a process. And there are elements of that process that are going to work for you, that are going to improve your facilities, going to make those first impressions, but also build an endowment because your alums are going to become involved. You're going to incorporate donors in the visioning process. A master planning process should not be done by the administration. It should not be done by the faculty. It should not be done by an architectural firm in a vacuum. It needs to be done with the entire school community. And I realize this may feel a little threatening because in order to do it effectively, you're going to need to show a little bit of your vulnerability. As you're talking with the group, as you're engaging the donors, you're going to be revealing a vulnerability. You're going to be expressing your desire that in order for us to be in business, in order for us to continue to educate for the next 50 years, we need to build an endowment. We need to improve our facilities. We need to take care of things. And when you do that, and when you say that, you are revealing a vulnerability. And I realize that's a challenge, but that is what we're talking about, proceeding with holy boldness. Proceeding without fear. Proceeding because you know the mission that you're on and the mission of your school is more important than your fear. It's more important than your fear. it's scary to open up your vulnerabilities. But that is the way that you will bring that engagement to being, that you will bring those individuals, those donors, to the understanding that, look, we're not going to survive if we don't do what we need to do. We lose too many Catholic schools every year. We have to stop. So as we look at more of that, engaging, just some images of engagement activities that would be conducted during the master planning process. Really, the whole community I'm talking about. In this case, there's a group of donors in the upper right photo. Lower right, it's a group of students. On the left, you'll see faculty and staff. And each time, this school is proceeding with holy boldness and revealing some elements of the school, some vulnerabilities, but gaining individuals who are ready, willing, and able to support the school and work with the school. I've got a couple of case studies we just want to run through, and this is a high school in Connecticut, and it began a number of years ago with a master planning process, a process that included elements to improve and expand the actual educational space as well as athletic space. And in this case, an addition that was going to house math and computers and science. And you can see this is going up. A pretty significant addition for this school that hadn't done anything of significance since it opened sometime in the late 50s, early 60s. Also, this project involved the renovation of the older portion of the building, the arts department, the music department, and really brought the school up, built an endowment to help them so they could lower tuition, increase enrollment. Again, they wanted to grow from 700 students to 1,000 students. I think they're somewhere in between that now. They haven't got there yet, but they're still working on it. Rural North Dakota, a school that was struggling with enrollment and was suffering from a fire. We were able to take that school through the master planning process and the engagement that was done, and a leader that really was moving forward with holy boldness. A president and the administration that said, we have to do this, we're going to do this, we're not going to let this stop us. Engaging those large donors and the whole school community, enabling them to create a state-of-the-art facility. As you can see, it's a with a black box theater in the upper right, cooking and economic learning center, a library that incorporated technology, and a beautiful chapel where they're able to hold mass daily. It's that type of belief in the mission, belief and faith that you can do it, that not alone, I'm not saying alone, it's not something you do alone, but those that you have educated, over the years are capable of doing this type of activity, of bringing the school up, making sure that the school is there, again, for the next 50 years. So number 10 in terms of lessons learned, our recommendation, focus on number 1 and number 9. Believe you can do it. Move forward with that holy boldness. Move forward with that faith. Carry out a master planning process, a real process. Yes, it may be scary because you're going to, in that process, you're going to be revealing vulnerabilities. But in doing so, you will realize that those who are with you, those you've engaged, will be there to help. You can do it. We've seen it happen. We've learned that those that don't move forward with holy boldness don't survive. I can't tell you how many schools have closed in the metropolitan Boston area over the past year alone. Way more than should have. Schools that I remember speaking with 10 years ago, saying we have to do something, yet not moving forward with holy boldness. I know Jack and I, when we visited a school in Pennsylvania, and discussed how they could move forward, yet they got wrapped up in Band-Aids. And the Band-Aids tied them up so much that they just didn't make it. We have to think about changing our mindsets and not doing what we've always done.
Thank you, Steve. I think with that too, we'd like to give our listeners confidence to be able to move forward. And please look at us as a resource. We began a conversation today, and we know, as Steve said, it talks a little bit about your vulnerability, to be able to say what your needs are and what your hopes and dreams are, and you can't do it alone. We are certainly here as a resource to be able to share whatever knowledge we have had, but collectively, we know that all of you in attendance, and as you go through this conference, you'll meet people with collectively hundreds of years of experience. So look at this as a start. We have our email addresses at the bottom to be able to connect with us. Our cell phone numbers are beside our email addresses. You can also connect with us by clicking off a conversation here. Please stop by our booth at the conference. We'd love to hear from you. If you go to our website, you can connect with us there, or by Facebook, or Instagram, or LinkedIn. Any of these ways, we would love to hear about your hopes and dreams and aspirations. And this piece in closing out is truly about you. Would love to hear about your lessons learned, your success stories, as well as some of the things that you're challenged with, and any questions you have about facilities. Believe it or not, we love, love, love talking about schools and Catholic schools and how we can help them in any way, even if we only have a small part in your success. So thank you again for joining us, and we hope you'll be able to connect with us. Again, these are the 10 lessons that we have learned over 20 years. And if you go away with remembering number 1 and number 10, that the rest of the pieces are going to fall in place for you. They just naturally fall in place.
It's important. I know it can be done. I've seen it done. Jack's seen it done. The team has seen it done. It's absolutely achievable. Absolutely achievable. The mission is important, and people are going to come to realize that with you. And you're going to see, you take those steps one step at a time, and you're going to see how that is going to get buoyed up.
We understand the challenges it is to be able to go out and find the funding. And we have loved attending garden parties with schools to be able to talk with potential donors. It is just an amazing process that you really have to have that confidence and somebody there right beside you to support you so that you can be bold with confidence.
That's right.
So are we closing out with questions?
We finished a little early, Jack.
All right.
I don't know how.
That was at
I have to
4:40.
admit, I'm not terribly familiar with this platform, so I'm not quite sure how we answer questions, if there are questions.
If anyone has questions, they can ask them in the chat or in the question area, and I can field those. We currently have a couple of statements. Good morning from Guam, hello from New Jersey, and a comment that the physical plants are amazing and chapels are impressive. And if you have questions, please ask them now.
I thank you for the compliments, but you know, those are all joint efforts with the schools that, I mean, the leaders of those schools, and the donors and the parents and grandparents, they'll make it possible. They'll.
And my apologies to Guam for saying good afternoon, good morning to you.
Oh, that's right.
And hello to from New Jersey. That's great that you're here. I can see some other folks coming in. Mark, thank you so much for the compliment. That's great.
Okay, we will now be closing the broadcast.
All
Thank
right.
you,
Well,
everyone.
everyone, take care, be safe,
Enjoy the conference. We wish you all the best.
and move forward with holy boldness, because you are important.
Another one, Fred from Guam.